So in this video I want to cover the way we draw a site outline or a site boundary within Revit, and the tool that we need to use to do that. So if we go to our Massing and Site tab at the ribbon, we have a tool up there called Property Line. So as it says in the description, it creates a property line in plan view. If I click on that tool, I get two choices. I can either create the property line by entering distances and bearings. So if I have that information of a survey plan, I can use that, or I can create it by sketching the line that represents the boundary. So I'm going to do both of these, but I'll cover those independently. So if I click on the top one there, it brings up this table. This is a little clunky in the way that Revit does this, but it does work. So what we're generating is a property line. A property line in Revit is an object, it's a modelled object, 3D object, that has its own properties and is a single object that contains all the lines that form the boundary of the site. So once we've drawn this, we can manipulate it and change it as a single object, and it's very useful to bring in and out of different views and very easy to show up on a view and hide it in other views. So if we're looking at using the data of a survey plan, the distance and bearing, we just go through this table and add that information into the table. So say I'm just going to randomly type some numbers in here, and I have to keep inserting lines to get Revit to generate the next portion of the boundary. So I'm going to draw a boundary which is rectangular because that's going to be the easiest for me to do. So if I type in 8,000 and that can be 0, and I insert another line and that one's 5,000 and that will be 270. So I can just enter the degrees into this box here in degrees, minutes and seconds depending on what information I've got, and I'll just close that out with this one, and that will be 180. The difficult thing about this particular box is that it's not actually drawing the property line as I'm typing the information in. I don't get to see what I've drawn until I hit OK, and it's drawn a property line. I can then locate the property line anywhere I want by dragging it around. I drop it there, and I've generated a property line. So that's one way to do it if you've got that information. If you need to edit the property line information, if you click on the property line object itself, the properties don't have a lot of information. We can actually give it a name, etc. But at the top in the ribbon, we have the edit table button, and we can tweak the numbers if we need to. What often happens when you're drawing the property line is the bearings are not necessarily representative of which direction the line goes. So it'll give you an angle based on north, but in some cases the bearing might be indicating the line goes from right to left, but when you draw it in Revit using those numbers, Revit thinks the line goes from left to right. So you might need to go into here. Often you'll find you'll get an hourglass shape or a weird shape to your property line, and you've got to go back into here and tweak the settings. So it's a little bit hit and miss. It's a little bit clunky, as I said, in the way that it works. But if you've got the right information and the information is accurate and proper, it will draw the property line reasonably quickly and easily for you. I cancel out of that, and I'll delete that property line. If I go back to property line and pick the other option, create by sketching, this one's a lot more simple, but it's a lot easier to do if you've got an existing shape underneath that you're using to draw your boundary. Again, the ribbon gives us the draw tools. We can draw any shape we want using these. We've got chains, offsets that we've had before in other tools, and this just allows us to draw a series of lines. And remember, the property line has to be a closed object like many within Revit. It can't be an open object. Click on that, click the green tick, and we've now generated our property line. So generally, instead of using the table to generate property lines, even if I've got survey information, I will actually draw the survey information using detailed lines within Revit, and then trace over it using a property line once I've got the site drawn to the shape that I want. So for example, I would just hit DL, draw some lines. If I know the boundary looks like this, using the information that I've got, and generate just a series of lines that represent the boundary. Delete that one. go to my property line, sketch it, and then I can just use those existing lines to form the single property line that represents the site. And then I can kind of delete my detail lines underneath. So now I have a property line, I can drag that around. As I said, it is a single object within Revit, and I can move that around as a single object. So you see there when I click on the object, I get two options at the top in the ribbon. Because I drew it as a sketch, I can edit the sketch. So if I find that the property line is not where I wanted it, I can click on that tool, I go back into the draw tool, and I can change the lines that made up the sketch. I also have the edit table. Now if I click on this, Revit will give me a warning, and it will tell me it's about to change my sketch into a table-based property line, and I can't change back again. So if you want to do that and you want to generate the actual boundary information, you click on yes, it will generate the table that we had before with all the distances and bearings of our property line. But I can't then edit the sketch once I've changed it to a table-based version. So as I said, this has generated a property line which is an object within Revit. It appears by default in most of the floor plans. If you choose to hide it, you can do that, but it's a single object that we can manipulate and change the properties of within Revit if we want to. It doesn't have to look like a solid line. We can easily override its graphics and make it a different color if we want. If we want a red boundary line, we can do that. And we can have it appear as we want within our view. So that's how you draw a property line in Revit, either by entering the data in a table or by sketching the outline.